Welcome back to the Mumbo but more Jumbo YouTube channel. A lot of you seem to really enjoy the previous video I made speaking about life goals and what my plans were for the future. So I thought I would do another one, given I have a spare hour currently talking about the past and what I've been up to over the past year. I say that I have a spare hour. Now, that's kind of like half true. I'm currently deep in the final preparation for my upcoming trip to Ecuador, where I'm going to hopefully climb Cotopaxi, which is a 5,800 meter tall volcano. And yeah, I mean, I'm in the packing stage currently. I kind of have all of my equipment is strewn everywhere, and I'm just like putting things into stuff sacks and triple checking gear lists and making sure that I haven't forgotten anything, because, you know, it's always stressful packing for a trip. Like a regular trip, it's stressful. You're looking at your shirts and you're thinking, do I actually even like this shirt? When was the last time I wore it? Do I need to bring it? How many shirts does a man need for this trip? Whereas for this, it's like, do I absolutely have my down jacket? Because if I don't, it's going to be a bad time. How many lip balms do I have? How much lip balm do I intend on using per day? Is 2 tubes going to be enough? Or am I going to crisp up by day 10 and never be able to speak again? You know, like these are the things that are running through your mind. But it's cool. It's fun. I do kind of like the process of like getting everything sorted and organizing things. And I do like the kit side. It's been fun dialing in my setup. But I will say, I have a spare hour because, so I woke up at 4 a.m. To give myself a nice long day to do all of this stuff. And it was all going well. And then, you know, I've also been working on some Minecraft videos and bits. And then it got to like 6 p.m. and I just conked out. I just fell asleep. And then I woke up about like 8:30, and now it's 11:30. And I thought, I'm just not tired, instead of just lying in bed staring at the ceiling or watching Instagram reels, I would go down to my office and talk to myself, which, yeah, I don't know if that's sensible. Who knows? We'll see how this comes together. Today we're going to be talking about previous trips and everything like that, because I realised that, you know, I go on all these trips, and outside of sort of posting a handful of pretty images to Instagram, I don't actually really speak about them too much. And that is kind of like, it's kind of by design, you know. I don't share much about the trips for like a handful of reasons, in a way. Although a lot of people ask me, you know, or they tell me, they're like, you have to film your climbing trips. You should shoot videos when you're out in these places. And I would say that sort of creating content around this stuff fundamentally changes the experience. You know, it's like, as you're making it, especially if it's a video, like it's almost like the way the act of creating content around it is done, it's like, it's on a spectrum of how intrusive it is, if that makes sense. And definitely, like, creating a full-blown, like, vlog-style video around an experience is about as intrusive as it gets, because you're having to do a lot. You're having to kind of tell a story. You know, it matters a lot what you're filming, and it does change. Like, it could potentially change your motivations. You know, it could, especially in these environments that could potentially be quite dangerous, actually sort of pushed you to make decisions that you otherwise wouldn't if you weren't filming something and you weren't thinking extrinsically versus intrinsically. You know, if you want to bail, but then you're thinking in your head, oh man, well, like, now I don't have a video and I've put all this effort into recording all these clips of this video and it's all a bit of a waste of time, that changes things. And as I say, it kind of exists on a spectrum, like, of how intrusive it is. I listened to a book, I think it was like Travels with My Dog Charlie or something, by Steinbeck, and I listened to that recently, and I was thinking to myself, like on the unintrusiveness list, writing a journal, like writing a travel journal, is about as unintrusive as it gets, and is almost like a good motivator to do things, because, you know, you don't have to film anything or take any photos in the moment, but you are there, like, you are seeking out stories, you're seeking out interesting things to say, you know, so that, and like interesting thoughts, which is kind of cool. Like, that's a cool way to travel. It will like switch your mind to think in terms of like, what is like an interesting thing that I can like talk about here. You know, how can you approach someone and it probably motivates you to actually like spend a little bit longer speaking to someone that you've just met. You know, it probably it probably motivates you to converse more with strangers and sort of like get stories out of them, and really like dive deep into the place from like on like a mind level as opposed to a visual level. I thought that was interesting. And then I think the way that I do photography when I'm out in these places, shooting with like an extremely minimal camera setup, normally a fixed lens camera, so I'm not bringing lenses or anything like that with me. It's just like a single point and shoot. That is quite unintrusive, you know. It's like I see, it does change the way your mind. I'm constantly like looking around for light and composition and frames that I like, and that's cool. It means that I'm engaging with the environment around me from like a visual perspective, right? So I'm no longer thinking about the story. If I was writing, I'd be thinking about the story, but like I'm now really engaged with like the visuals. Like, what is the light doing? What is the landscape doing? How will this look through my camera? And that's cool, and I would say that's still quite far down the spectrum. And then you start getting more intrusive when you start introducing much bigger photography setups, like sets of lenses, tripods and everything. That starts to, you know, slow things down and get tricky. And then you have like the vlog style stuff, that's getting really intrusive. And then you have almost like the... I'll name it like Craig Adams style hiking video where you have these like cinematic scenes that you're setting up with a tripod and a camera, and then you're like walking past and then going back and picking everything up. That seems like, you know, you're effectively doing everything twice, and that's like super intrusive. And yeah, and it's like I'm enjoying being in these places for me. And I'm not saying any of these people aren't, like, but for me, that act of creating content around it detracts from the experience, and I entirely care about the experience. You know, that is the reason that I'm there, and I would be there without taking photos. Like, taking the photos for me elevates the experience because I love it, and I love getting beautiful frames. Like, I enjoy that intensely. I love watching the way light falls on environments, and I love the feeling when you can see it popping off and you capture the frame and you're like, yes, it's worked out. But then if I didn't have to share it, like, that wouldn't be the end of the world. It's nice to share, and I enjoy creating these little, like, when I do a post on Instagram or whatever, I do enjoy sort of like compiling the photos in a way that hopefully tells sort of a story, like visually. I try my best there. But like, yeah, if I didn't share them, I don't care. And I have done a bunch of trips where I haven't shared any of the pictures, just because it doesn't matter too much to me. Because I think another thing is that when you create content around something like that, you're also inviting opinions that weren't necessary. You know, it's like if I've gone out somewhere and I've done an easy climb, you know, I've done like a day of moderate climbing, and I've filmed it all and everything like that, edited it all together, and then post it as an Instagram reel, and I've had a fantastic day, a really cool experience. It's inviting opinions that aren't necessary. You know, like, so like you could then start getting people saying like, oh, it's an easy route, like it doesn't matter. Oh, you think you're so cool, yeah, and then it's like, oh man, like, I had a really nice day out, but yeah, I guess they're right. Maybe I should be climbing something harder. Maybe I should be having bigger days out, you know? And it's like, no, this is not. It's actually not, like, I wanted to be there, and that's that. So I think that is a long sort of rambly reason why a lot of the content that I share around my trips and everything is mainly just like a drop of little images and everything like that, and then I move on. And again, I don't want it to detract from the experience too much, and I don't want to invite too much opinion on the things that I do, because I know for a fact that I love the things that I do, and I would do them gladly without being in a position that I have to share them. I will also say, before we begin, I am so aware how fortunate I am to be in this position. Like, well, number one, you know, just I have the coolest job in the world, just full stop, and then also the flexibility that comes with that job and the ability to adjust my schedule accordingly is just unbelievable. Like, it's ridiculously, I'm so fortunate, and I'm aware that this is fleeting, and I'm making the most of it while I have it. And down the line, when I have to get a regular job, I will be thankful that I had the experience and I made the most of it. But for now, I am making the most of my ability to sort of like rubber band my schedule about, because like my everyday life for me is not balanced. But like taken on a macro time scale, it's probably mildly balanced. No one day has like a set amount of work and then exercise and then socializing at all. Everything is like red line to the maximum. It's like I'm working 14 hours and then the next day I'm exercising fully and like going out on massive days out in the mountains, and then the next day I'm sleeping and being lazy, and then it's like, and then I'm doing two or 3 day blocks of like extremely long days of working and everything like that, and it's like that is it. And then over a macro time scale it probably balances out, and I'm extremely thankful that I'm able to set up my life like that. Like, I know that is not the normal experience. So that is that. Yeah. Let's start things off with the start of the year, which is on I think it was January the 1st. I'm fairly certain on New Year's Day. Me and Vicky, we flew out to Krabi or Ao Nang in Thailand, and Krabi is, God, am I going to get this wrong? I'm fairly certain Krabi is like the little island next to Ao Nang. So Ao Nang is like the town, and then Krabi is like, oh no, Railay Beach is on Krabi. Oh my goodness. See, immediately I'm not 100% certain of any of the geography here, but regardless, we're out there to learn to sport climb, which is crazy to say because it feels like I've been sport climbing for ages, but I actually came into 2025 purely a boulderer. So I had been on like a handful of bouldering trips and everything like that, and I wasn't really feeling outdoor bouldering necessarily. It's funny, like we had, and this is a previous trip, I think sometime in 2024, we had spent some time in the French-Spanish Pyrenees, like right on the border, and we were in a place called Targasson. Yeah, Targasson. And it's like we were surrounded by these amazing mountains, and then we had the bouldering guidebook up, and we had found this boulder that looked pretty cool, and it seemed like inspiring. So then we like hiked out into the forest. We got to the boulder. It turns out like the scale of the photo was not as imagined, and it was this like tiny low ball thing with like this crazy low sit start, and we were surrounded by these mountains and stuff like that, and we were in this like damp forest battling with this horrendous low start that I just couldn't even get off the ground on. Like I literally could not do a single move. I was just using maximum effort, and my bum was still welded to the pad. And I just remember looking around being like, what am I actually doing? Like, I would much rather be in the mountains. Like we should definitely learn how to do this bigger stuff so that we don't have to do this bouldering malarkey. And don't get me wrong, I think bouldering is cool. I think boulders are super cool, but I realized at that moment that actually I would much rather be spending time on like bigger routes. So I had done a little bit of, after that experience, I had done a little bit of sport climbing in the climbing gym, learned how to sort of like lead belay and lead climb and everything like that, and then traveled out to Krabi in Thailand to outdoor sport climb for the first time. My first time outdoor sport climbing was on Railay Beach, which is pretty sweet. I mean, it's a beautiful location. It gets used quite a bit in movies. I think like there's been James Bond films and stuff like that shot there, and it's stunning. Like, I can totally understand why. It's these crazy limestone formations, like lots of overhang stuff. It's just like beautiful blue water. These little islands sort of like poking out of the sea around, and there's monkeys, which is like such a funny experience. You'll be rock climbing, you'll be like cruxing out, stressing, and then this tiny little baby monkey will just like fly past you, swinging about, and you just think, wow, that's inspirational, There's also these big monitor lizards. Like, it was funny. I was quite new to belaying at the time, which is belaying is when you're like managing the rope for the climbing partner. So my girlfriend Vicky was up on the wall, and I was belaying, and then this like monitor lizard comes over, and they're pretty big, and I don't think you'd want one to bite you. I don't know if they have like, I think they've got quite a lot of bacteria in their mouths and stuff like that. And this monitor lizard just like wandered over, walked right in front of me, and just like walked through my coils of rope that were on the ground. I had to shout up to Vic, being like, "Hey, like this is a weird situation, but you're gonna have to stop climbing for a while. I'm sorry, like because I think she was on track. I think to on site maybe like a 6B plus or something, but." I could no longer pay out any rope for her to climb with without like entangling this lizard, which was a unique belaying experience. You know, that doesn't happen in indoor climbing gyms. But yeah, it was super cool. It was super beautiful. We hired like a guide for the first few days so that I could learn how to clean anchors and everything like that. Because of course, when you're climbing outdoors, like, unlike in a climbing gym, none of the hardware and everything is in place. There's bolts in the rock, these tiny little bolt holes, and then you clip your own quick draws, which is just 2 carabiners with a sling between them. You clip your own quick draws, and then you clip your rope into that, and you have to build your own anchor up at the top, and that allows you to get off. And then when you're done with the climb, obviously you have to retrieve all of this equipment. So there's like a bit of an order, a bit of a process to doing all of that sort of thing safely, so that you don't detach yourself from the cliff face, because that would be bad. So you have to make sure that you do everything in the correct order and do everything properly. And it was fun. It was cool. It's a beautiful place, and it's definitely hot. Definitely a hot place to climb. Very humid. I probably used about 1 kilo of chalk. Yeah, I would do like 2 moves, all my chalk would be gone, and I'd just be like dipping my hand into my chalk bag constantly. But there's a bunch of cool crowds around Krabi, and to be honest, like one of the highlights for me genuinely was actually going to, firstly the food. The food in Ao Nang was amazing. It's a beautiful place as well. So from a photography perspective, it was stunning. Like I deeply enjoyed like waking up super early in the morning when the light is just like cutting across the landscape, cutting across the town, and everything was sort of like waking up. It's my favorite time to shoot photos, especially in like urban environments, because everything is waking up. And that was like a real highlight for me those mornings. And then also we also went to a Muay Thai fight, which was super cool. You know, I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I had like a tangential interest in MMA. Not massively, but like I was kind of somewhat familiar with it in a way. And obviously a lot of MMA fighters have like Muay Thai experience, and one of my favorite pieces of media of all time is a documentary series. Maybe it's still on Netflix, I'm not entirely sure, called Fight World, which, to be honest, more from like a cinematography perspective and the way that the show was made, I found inspiring. Like that inspired a lot of the way that I filmed and made documentaries from that point forth. But like that gave me a huge amount of respect for a lot of these different fighting styles. And going to the Muay Thai fight was awesome. Like the music and the dancing and everything like that, it's incredible. Like whatever music, whatever time signature that music is so cool. And it just like adds so much atmosphere, and it's so different from anything that I've ever experienced. And it was impressive to see. We were like right at the front because it was a pretty small little Muay Thai fight, and we were right there. You could see everything, you could hear everything. It was brutal, it was savage. I would never want to be in the ring, but it was interesting to watch. So yeah, that was Krabi in Thailand. I think we were there for like 2 weeks, I think, and then we traveled over to the Philippines, which is a beautiful place. We spent a lot of time in Cebu. My girlfriend has got, her family have like a family home there. They've got family there, which just so happens to be in Moalboal, which is like an awesome place in Cebu. Which I think they got super lucky, because this family home that I think they've had for maybe like 25 years, and this was when it was quite a sleepy town that had a little bit of diving infrastructure. Like there was some tourism from diving, because there's these beautiful coral reefs all around it. And now it is busy. Like it's a busy spot. It has changed a lot, even in the time that I've been going there. You know, I've been traveling out to this area for probably about the past 8 or 9 years, and I've seen like a huge shift in the way it is, especially after sort of 2020, 2021. You know, it's been a massive shift, way more touristy, a little bit more party-y, which is like, yeah, it's not my vibe. It's not like the sort of thing that I enjoy. But it's cool to see the town thrive in it and doing well, and it's cool to see the local population doing well there. It's a little bit of a shame that the coral reefs seem like they have receded ever so slightly, but I think that is the case in a lot of areas, to be honest. And who am I to talk? I am also a tourist in these places. Like, this is the thing. Like, I can't complain about tourists if I am also one. But yeah, so a lot of the time spent in Cebu and in Wild Wild is mainly spent relaxing. And again, photography. Oh my goodness, just one of my favorite places to shoot photos. Again, the morning light is insane. Just the colors in the Philippines and in Cebu and in Wild Wild are just amazing. Like, everything. It's impossible to take a bad photo, especially in the morning light. So it's just one of my favorite things to just like wander about in the markets as they're just waking up and just like poke around and shoot photos and just like head down to the beach for the sunrise and see how it's going and just like chase really pretty light. I also do have like a mountain bike out there, funnily enough. So I occasionally just like head off into the hills and just bomb around on my mountain bike, and that's something I enjoy doing. And we also do spend quite a lot of time climbing there as well. Now, there's no climbing, as far as I can tell, at least sport climbing wise, in Wild Wild, but there is some out like kind of nearish the city. It's about an hour's drive out of Cebu City in a crag called Cantabaco. Cantabajo? I think that's how you say it, Cantabajo. Developed by a pretty small crew. There's not a massive climbing scene in the Philippines, but it's a cool climbing scene, and we often climb with a guy called Merville Patagas. I hope I get his name right. He runs a company called Grits Gravity, and he is a fantastic teacher. He is incredible, and we did some multi-pitch climbing for the first time. So multi-pitch climbing, how do I describe this? So you obviously only climb with like a certain amount of rope, generally sort of between 50 to 70 meters. So you've got, I think we had a 60-meter rope. So that means that you can only really climb in pitches of up to maybe 30 meters in length, because you also need enough rope that if you were to retreat and lower back down, you would be able to get back down. So with a 60-meter rope, you can go up and then come down a total of 30 meters, if that makes sense. So that would be like a single pitch. So you climb up the rope length, and then with multi-pitch, you then attach yourself to the top of the first pitch, set up an anchor and everything like that, clip yourself in solidly, and then pull all the rope up, and then your climbing partner follows you up and joins you at the top of the pitch, and then one of you leads on, and you kind of like do this sort of like yo-yoing back and forth, going up through the pitches. And there's not too many multi-pitch routes in the Philippines. We pulled onto like a 3-pitch route, but then it absolutely chucked it down with rain, like just went full tropical thunderstorm, and we got completely drenched. So our first multi-pitch route experience was a bail, and we did 2 pitches, but that was enough to learn. And again, Merville is like, he's one of the best teachers. I've done a handful of different courses and a handful of different sort of like outdoor bits and pieces with guides, and Merville is by far just like one of the most detail orientated, one of the most patient, one of the most safety conscious people I've ever climbed with. He's incredible. So I would highly recommend him. And yeah, maybe hopefully I'll remember to put his details down in the description. But yeah, that was like a super, super enjoyable experience learning to multi-pitch climb, because there's like a few extra processes and extra things to understand there. And that was cool. And that sort of rounded off the sort of the Asia trip, So then we traveled back home for a while, and then I was super psyched after that multi-pitch experience and everything like that. And I was kind of like pretty set in my ways that I wanted to do more stuff in the mountains this year. So I had actually booked myself also onto another course. This year, like, remember, I started this year a boulderer, which doesn't give you much in the way of like outdoor experience. So if you're wondering why I'm doing so many courses, it's because I'm jumping a lot of steps quite quickly. But yeah, I got back and was like super excited for a bunch of mountain stuff. And while I was out in the Philippines, I'd actually booked myself onto a Scottish winter hill walking course, or like a Scottish winter skills course, and also a Scottish winter mountaineering course. And yeah, so I got back, spent a few weeks at home, then travelled up to Scotland, and yeah, hopped onto the hill with the Glenmore Lodge. The Glenmore Lodge is like an organisation. It's in the Cairngorms, and yeah, spent 2 days doing some Scottish winter hill walking. So that is sort of like learning good technique in crampons, making sure that you can ascend hills safely, making sure that you can self-arrest correctly, which is effectively when you've got like a steep enough slope that if you were to fall over on the ice and you would start to like properly slide, with your ice axe, you can self-arrest, you can stop yourself from sliding potentially to your death. So it's an important skill to get right, and I wanted to make sure that I had that dialed in. And then going over some navigation and like avalanche understanding, because I grew up in the south of England. We don't have avalanches. We don't, and I didn't spend much time in the mountains and things. So there's a lot of stuff that is just completely foreign to me, and like avalanche understanding is one of those things. I didn't grow up skiing. I didn't grow up doing any of that stuff. So I really wanted to make sure that I got that stuff like super dialed, because you can't fear what you don't know. So having an understanding of this stuff is important to existing in these environments for a long time. And like, I am overly cautious. I will say that I am super cautious about all of this stuff, but that's good because I'm kind of aware that even still, I have a good understanding, but like, I don't have a huge amount of understanding. I don't have a huge amount of experience. At least I don't have like a massive of data to pull from, if that makes sense. I've spent a lot of days out in the mountains now, but I don't have like those years and years where you've seen lots of things and you've like experienced a huge variety of conditions that you can like read it incredibly well. I don't have that yet, so that means that I'm nervous, and I'm trying to just pull in as much information as I can. So that's why I did that course. And then I was going to do a Scottish winter mountaineering course, which is kind of like the next step up from hill walking, where you're kind of like generally not roped together, but then for like short sections, you might rope up and protect it a little bit, just in case it's really high consequence moves, or if it's like sections that you're not feeling so confident on and you would want to be roped up for. So it's just like an extra layer of safety. So it's just running over like basic belays and like basic rock protection and everything like that. The reality is I didn't end up on this course, and that is because on day 2 of my Scottish winter hill walking course, I probably had one of the worst days of my life. I knew something was wrong on the first day of the course. I was sat there and I was like not feeling amazing, and like my eyes were just watering. I felt so bad because the person was like doing a little presentation on avalanche stuff and like some nav bits, and I was just sat there like my eyes were streaming. And I was like, this is weird. I don't know what's going on. But then I managed to make it through the first day. I don't know how. The second day, I managed to make it to like the middle of the afternoon. And then, yeah. Like my stomach just decided like today's not the day. So I was up there. We had brutal conditions as well. Like we actually had to turn back. We asked the guide, like, would you be out in these conditions? And they were like, no, like this is madness. But like, so it was like part of the course almost. It's like we're taking a rain check, and the rain check was, no, this is crazy. It's like 70 mile an hour winds and like minus 17 degrees Celsius wind chill. Let's head back down. But like, I'm so glad we made that decision, because I don't think I would have made it any further. That's all I'm going to say. Because, yeah, there was like an hour and a half, 2 hour walk back to the van that we're in, and then like a half-hour drive. Oh, yeah, it was just a disaster. Like, they just had the worst stomach cramps. I was moving so slowly. I felt so bad. I was moving as fast as a human possibly can in my situation. But yeah, it turns out I had norovirus. Just not good. Yeah. I mean, it was just not a good situation. Like, just not good. So I was pretty desperate. I was pretty pale. And, yeah. And then I was staying in the van that time. Like, we have a van set up that we camp out in. And it was just pretty biblical. It was just not good. So my Scottish winter mountaineering course, in theory, would have started the day after. But unfortunately, I spent a full day just not being very well. So I missed that course. I drove home, feeling a bit sorry for myself. Probably about 5 kilos lighter, which was great for some of my climbing projects briefly. No, I don't mean that. But yeah, no, it was not good. It was not good. So yeah, that was that. But like the Scottish winter experience was incredible, and I'll get onto it. But I recently had another Scottish winter experience that went significantly better. I absolutely love Scotland. It's one of my favourite places on the planet. It's incredible. So we'll talk about that later. But for now, spent a few weeks at home again, and then I was off to Patagonia. The first half of this year was stacked. It was insane. I don't know. It was crazy. It was so busy and so mad. But yeah, there's this trek that I had always wanted to do called the Patagonia O Trek in the Torres del Paine National Park. It's beautiful from a climbing perspective. I mean, again, this wasn't a climbing trip, but I've watched so many videos of people climbing these iconic towers, the Torres del Paine towers, and like they are just insane formations. I mean, it's actually the desktop background of my computer. Like these formations just don't actually make any sense. It makes no sense how something could be so vertical and so tall. It's like stunning. And the O Trek sort of goes around this main rock formation. So you fly into a place called Puerto Natales, which is an awesome little town. It is so cool. I must admit, when we actually flew in initially, I was like, I'd just come back from Scotland a few weeks earlier, and we flew in, and I was like, man, I flew like halfway around the world, and it looks like Scotland. And it really does. It has that sort of like wildernessy. The grass color is the same. It felt really, really familiar. But then, Puerto Natales is like a beautiful little town. Super cool. There's these sort of like really big stray dogs. I don't even know if they are strays, but I'm not entirely sure. But there's dogs wandering about, and they are like absolutely adorable, and they follow you about, and they're extremely cute. And yeah, this was our first time doing any sort of multi-day backpacking, I suppose. I've done a lot of hiking in my time, or at this point I'd done a lot of hiking in my time, and I had done bike packing. Me and Vic, we cycled to Rome in 2022. Yeah, 2022, which is like a 40-day trip. So I had experience of like, A, what the compound fatigue would feel like, but also B, sort of like camping multiple nights in a row, understanding, things like airing out your tent and making sure that, you get things dry when you can, and like cooking. Although with bikepacking, we were relying on food purchased in stores, and we're really only traveling with sort of like 2 or 3 days of food at a time. Whereas with the O Trek, you pretty much, you are out there, like you're out in a fairly wildernessy environment. I can't remember how many days it is. Maybe 9 days, maybe 10 days, 9 or 10 days. So you're in a pretty wildernessy environment. You are staying on campsites because that's all you're allowed to do. It's a pretty locked down hike, I will say. If you don't enjoy signing up for permits and making sure that you've got your campsite sorted, I probably wouldn't recommend it. It's extremely locked down. You're like that. You have to have your permits dialed. You have to have all your campsites booked, otherwise they won't let you in. It's like really, really locked down on that sort of thing. But it makes sense why. It's incredibly beautiful, and it's a rugged environment. It's wilderness. It has the worst weather in the world, although we did get really lucky with weather. We had probably the best weather window that Patagonia's ever seen. Had like 9 days of perfect sun, no wind. It's crazy. But yeah, you're carrying all your food with you, like in the dehydrated meals and everything like that. And it was sweet. So it was our first time. It was our first time doing any sort of multi-day backpacking, which kind of came with its own like
organization and working things out. So the few weeks before, we were kind of like scurrying about, making sure that we had the correct equipment for the hike and making sure that we had like 60-liter backpacks, because that's not something that, you know, we're normally doing day pack stuff, and like 40 liters is the maximum you need for sort of like winter mountaineering and everything like that. So then, yeah, we were getting like 60-liter backpacks, filling those up, getting all the dehydrated meals, you know, making sure that the jet boil was working, everything like that, getting our layering system sorted, because again, that is something like I hadn't done too much of. So yeah, dialing all of that sort of thing in before we left was key, and I gotta say we smashed it, because no, I mean, yes, we did have insanely good weather, like it was really, really good, but like the trek felt really breezy. It was pure type 1 fun. Like it was just a good time. You know, everything was dialed. Our tent, which we had from bike packing, we've got like a big Agnes tent, was wicked. It was great. We were waking up every single day, like no stuffy noses, no condensation on the inside, like good airflow. Our sleeping bags were perfect, because it does get pretty cold in Patagonia. It's pretty low down in the world, so yeah, it gets pretty cold at night. Sometimes sort of like -3, -4. Our sleeping bags, they were sweet, because we've got like -12 winter sleeping bags. So we were feeling comfortable. High R value inflatable mats, all that sort of thing. We've got all the gear. We had it, and we just had a breezy time. So it was great. It was great. I will say, like, it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Super rugged, crazy rock formations, beautiful granite. Like, if you're interested in rocks, then it's the place to be. I will say it's quite busy. Oh, and the glacier. Sorry, I mean, wow. Like, that was my first time seeing a glacier like that. Like, you come over, I think it's called the Gardner Pass, which is a mountain pass. I think it's about 2,000 meters tall. And you come over this pass, and it's just glacier as far as the eye can see. It's like my mind was completely boggled by how that much ice could exist. And then obviously, like, the heartbreaking thing that you see is like the huge line where the glacier has been in recent years, and you can see how much has receded. And then you are hit with the realization that you have flown halfway around the world to see this glacier. And it's like, oh God, that feels so bad. And that is depressing, you know? But my gosh, is it beautiful? And we were so lucky to see it, because, you know, with the way the weather is in Patagonia, it's so unpredictable. Like, a lot of people don't see the glacier. You don't have the visibility for it. Whereas we had a pin sharp day, and you could see it just going back for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And the crazy thing was, when you descended down into the valley, like, you're viewing it from above when you come over the top of this this pass, but when you descend down into the valley, you look across, and you can see the glacier is probably like 150 meters, 200 meters tall. It's like, it's just crazy, you know. These icebergs that are there, the size of boats. Like, no, they'd make boats look small, like cruise ships. No, not quite cruise ship, but like big boat-sized icebergs. It was mad. It was insane. So that was incredible. I will say it was quite busy. Like, it's pretty busy, especially on the W side. So you've got two tracks. You've got the O track and the W track, and the W track sort of like scoops in on one side of the O track. And I think because they're accessible from, like, you can be a day tripper on the W side of the trek. It was pretty busy. Probably one of the most busy, like, outdoor places I've ever been. So it was like this funny sort of like, yeah, this funny thing where you've got like this crazy wilderness, there's nothing around, but then there are a lot of people like on the specific trail that you're on. And when we traveled up to see the pillars, like, I can't actually, you know what, I'm gonna look up what are the pillars called, because I feel like they've got a name. They are called the Torres del Paine Pillars. All right, fair enough. Oh, Towers of Pain. Yeah, there you go. That's a great name. How did I forget that? That's incredible. But yeah, and you can do a hike up to the base of them. And it's always good to do that at sunrise, or like before sunrise. You hike up in the dark, and then the sun rises and hits them with this like bright pink light. And I got some very pretty photos of it, and it looks empty. It looks like there's no one around. Behind me, there's probably about 40 people. that is the reality of it. That's the reality of it. But I didn't mind. I thought it was fun. Like, the thing is, it was freezing cold, super, super cold. And it was super cool. Like, we had made some friends on the trek because of how locked in the campsites and everything like that are. Like, sort of the people that you start the trek with, you see them basically every single night at all the different campsites and things. So you do make friends and stuff. And, like, people had come up and they had like traveled up really fast and light, not really thinking that they would be sitting in the cold. And then they had gotten up there and it was freezing. Whereas I had realized it's probably going to be pretty cold up at that elevation. So I'd brought my sleeping bags up with me. And then, there was like a bunch of people just like piled into our sleeping bags. And it was fun. Like, it was hilarious. I got a bunch of really nice photos that I'm super happy with. Still probably some of my best landscape photos, I suppose, even though they are completely standard. Like, everyone that was there on that day will have gotten the exact same photo. I don't care because it ended up looking really pretty, and definitely one of my favorite places I've ever been. And I'm extremely excited. Obviously, I'm going back to South America next week, and I can't wait. And I really, really want to spend more time there, like do some extended trips there in the future. Sort of like head over there for like a month or two, rent a motorbike or something like that, and just like travel around, especially the Andes, especially Patagonia. I'd love to go to Chalten. I'd love to see the Fitzroy Massif. I'd love to see Cerro Torre, because there's like a quote by Reinhold Messner. I'm gonna get this up because this is a good one. Messner, Cerro Torre description. Because he described this mountain in one of the prettiest ways. He described it as a shriek turned to stone. What? I don't even think the mountain can live up to what that description is. But then the photos of it does look like a shriek turned to stone. It's crazy looking. It's like super sharp, mad looking mountain. And very few people have climbed it. Alpinist Colin Haley recently did climb it solo in winter. Probably one of the craziest alpinism things that I've ever heard. And I actually did bump into Colin Haley in Chamonix, which was super, super cool. I was very excited to see him. He had literally just got back from this incredible ascent. And I went for a fist bump. He went for a handshake, and we kind of met in the middle. And I think about that daily. But other than that, he was lovely. I was so excited to see him, though. I thought, I think about that interaction way too much, and he probably doesn't think about it at all. But that pains me. Anyway, outside of that, after coming home from Patagonia, I was still super psyched for mountaineering stuff, and I think I'd spent a few weeks at home, then headed out to Wales, which is quite local to me-ish, for a couple of days, staying in the van. And I was doing a little bit of Welsh mountaineering, so learning how to place traditional protection. So remember earlier on, I was saying sport climbing has like bolts. Well, traditional protection, or trad, is what it's known as. You don't have those bolts, so you are placing passive protection into cracks and gaps in the rock. So you'll have these things called nuts, which you will place into cracks, like constricting cracks. So you'll like wedge them in. It's like almost like a little wedge. You wedge it in and then clip your rope to that. Or you have cams, which are like camming devices that you can place into cracks, and they expand into the crack, and then you can clip your rope into that, and it's a way to protect it. It's obviously a little bit less safe and a little bit less secure than sport climbing, which is bolted and on like fixed gear, but it's still generally quite safe. And especially on the sort of stuff that I'm doing it on, where I'm never really in a position where I'm going to fall, like I'm never climbing anything too hard, it's super safe. It's just like an extra level of protection that you can add. So I spent a few days doing that, and then me and Vic headed out doing some scrambling and stuff. We climbed up Trafan and did some cool routes and everything, and it was her first time doing any sort of like mountaineering-y stuff, and she had a blast, and it was a super cool few days. Again, we had like incredible weather, got super lucky there, and then headed back home for like an extended stretch of multiple months, where I was mainly just hiking and training. Did have a handful of concerts. This is unrelated to trips, but like some highlights of my year really was like going to some of these gigs. We got to see Tyler the Creator, which was super cool. I've been listening to him for a long time. And then actually all of the gigs that I went to this year have been hip hop based, which is not like, I do listen to a decent amount of that, but like it's not the majority of my music. But it does. It's fun. Like going to see that sort of music live is much more fun actually than a lot of the moody stuff that I listen to. And like we went to see Green Tea Peng, who's awesome, like a London-based artist, and her band were just like so good, like so good. She was insane. Her band are incredible. And then also got to see Little Sims recently, also at the O2, which was wild. And we were front row. So cool. I've been listening to Little Sims for ages, ever since she collaborated with the Gorillaz probably 10 years ago now. And yeah, actually saw her maybe 8 or 9 years ago when she was opening for the Gorillaz. But yeah, it was super cool seeing her. And she is an amazing, again, London-based artist. Just awesome. Probably one of the best gigs I've ever been to. It was insanely fun. Just she brought all the energy. Yeah, just such a good like track variety as well. Like she goes from like clubby stuff to like hit like jazzy stuff. Just cool. But yeah, so a few months at home, chilling, hiking, climbing indoors, training a lot because around sort of like May, June time, we're heading out to Chamonix for the first sort of like big mountain trip of the year, which is always exciting. Chamonix is one of my favorite places on the planet. I really do want to live somewhere in proximity to Chamonix at some point in my life. I just think it's just an incredible place. It's just so beautiful. And the goal for the trip was like big multi-pitch mountaineering style routes. So like dialing in rope systems, like getting faster, getting more efficient, covering a lot of ground quickly, and doing like big routes, like sort of like 10, 11, 12 pitches. Still sport, not trad, so not doing any alpine climbing or anything like that. Sport climbing, but there's just so much to do in that valley. So yeah, did a ton of amazing stuff. But it got quite hot in Chamonix, and we were out there with our dog. So we had like Vicky's sister flew out for a week to stay in Chamonix, and then like she then was able to stay with Kubo, our dog. We travel a lot with Kubo to all of these places. So like whenever we're doing anything in the UK or basically anything that we don't have to fly, Kubo's coming with us unless it's like a serious mountain objective. And we only I will only spend a maximum of about 6 weeks of the year away from Kubo, just because I don't want that. Kubo's the best. He's the cutest dog in the world. I love spending time with him. He makes everything better. So 6 weeks of the year. 6 weeks of the year is kind of the limit, and we actually kind of blew through that like at the start of this year. In fact, no, because we probably spent 9 weeks away this year, which is a bit rough. Because we had blown through a lot of it right at the start of the year with Krabi Philippines and then the Patagonia stuff. But everything else he's coming with. He's not always coming up. He's not very rarely coming up these mountains and stuff like that, but he is coming with. But yeah, so Vicky's sister was out in Chamonix for about a week, and she was chilling with Kubo while we did these like big mountaineering, big multi-pitch style routes, which was super cool. We did that for like a week or two, but then it got really, really hot, and Kubo was just struggling. I think he got a little bit ill, I think, like unrelated to the heat, but yeah, I mean, it's intense. We're staying in the van. The van's pretty warm. There's nowhere really to relax. Like, it got really hot. He had like a crazy heat wave that was unexpected. And like he was just not enjoying any of the hikes, which normally he's having the best time of his life, right? Like we're out hiking, and just like he's having the time of his life. He was just being quite slow and struggling a little bit. So we decided to actually drive down to a place called Orpierre, which is a little town, still in France, kind of like just off to the west of the Alps. And it's a super cool little town that is surrounded by these beautiful cliffs that are great for single pitch climbing. So we thought, we can put him in the shade. Kubo can chill in the shade. We can wake up early in the mornings. Like, Kubo can chill in the shade. We'll climb until like 2 p.m. and then we can come down and then chill out in the town. And that worked pretty well. But then it got so hot. Like, it was literally like 36 or 37 degrees. It was just impossible to do anything. So we actually ended up getting a little Airbnb and with air conditioning. and then he was able to like recover and chill out because it was just intense. It was so hot. And super hot for us. And it was at this point that I actually realized that I messed up big time with my remote recording setup. And I had like forgotten the power cable to my computer. And it's not that weird of a power cable, but nowhere had it in stock anywhere. And then I ordered one, and then it took ages to arrive. And it ended up taking like 3 weeks to actually get sorted. And that was like a really big wobble in my remote recording setup situation. And it made me question whether or not this is actually something I should be doing. Thankfully, I haven't had any big wobbles like that since, and it's been working really, really well since then. But yeah, that was pretty stressful because I suddenly realized, and I was like, man, we might have to go home. But with that being said, I did have a course that I was booked into. Like, we definitely would have gone home. Given the circumstances where it's too hot for us to do anything, and also now I can't work either, we would have gone home had it not been for the fact that I was booked into an alpine autonomy course later that month. So, yeah, my big goal for this year, 2025, was to get into alpine climbing, and my first stage of that was to do an alpine autonomy course, which was like basically learning how to operate in the Alps and like most essentially make sure that you're walking on glaciers correctly and you're not going to, well, you might still fall into a crevasse, but you're not going to like fully fall into a crevasse. Like, you'll be able to read the glacier so that hopefully you don't fall into a crevasse, and if you do fall into a crevasse, you'll be able to rescue yourself with your climbing partners. My other goal was that I was hoping that there would be other people on the course that I would be able to make friends with and be climbing partners with, which kind of happened. I really liked all the people on my course, but they're all from very different parts of the country, all have very different schedules, so we haven't done anything together. But like, that is always the benefit of doing these courses, is it does put you in contact with other people who clearly share similar interests with you. So that was like the big thing. I was doing this alpine autonomy course. It was sort of like 6 or 7 days long. It was with a company called Alpine Guides, and the guide was Al Powell, who I hadn't realized is like, he's a really big deal. Like, I was reading an alpinism book, or like, I was reading a book by a guy called Nick Bullock. It's just like a climbing book. He's an English climber, and he's done all sorts of really cool, crazy stuff in his time. And there are multiple chapters in that book detailing mad first descents and mad expeditions with Al Powell. And it made me realize this, like, wow, this guy, like, I had a very overqualified teacher telling me like really basic stuff about glacier walking. But yeah, it was awesome. Like, definitely one of the highlights of the year for me. It made me realize that it's like, this is really what I want to do. And looking back, like, it's pretty crazy. I'd gone from sport climber at the start of the year, like learning to sport climb, to by June being out in the Alps, like as part of a rope team, crossing glaciers, like doing alpine ascents on traditional protection, and like, yeah, in like quite exposed, crazy environments, you know, climbing with crampons and like a single ice axe, nothing too technical just yet. But yeah, just like, yeah, pretty crazy environments to be in. And spending time in the alpine huts, like, honestly, is just awesome. Like, these huts are in the most mad locations. I mean, the Glacier de Tour, yeah, just like watching the way the light sets and then rises, because the beauty of doing stuff in the Alps is that you're doing alpine starts, which means you're starting super early. So just like watching the sun rise and like hit these mountains and like catch across the glacier, honestly, it's like, it's just the best, you know. It's just like absolutely breathtaking. And like, I don't even necessarily care so much about the climbing when the locations like that. Like, I'd almost be tempted to just travel out to the alpine huts and just sit in them because like, sometimes you don't have to climb in these locations. Just like they are just unbelievable. And yeah, the Glacier de Tour, just the way it is formed, like it's like a big old bowl, just like glacier for completely, especially where we were, where it was like completely flat glacier, like it hadn't dried out yet because it was quite early in the season. So it's just this like just expanse of like perfectly smooth, like pool ball snow, as just like in this huge bowl surrounded by these jagged peaks that catch the sun as soon as it starts rising, and it like the sun gradually like makes its way down the peaks as you're crossing the glacier. And then you're like, also there's just something about the way that you're crossing it. You know, you're crossing it and you're tied to one another. You've got this rope heading out in front of you, and it just looks stunning. And we climbed a mountain called Aiguille de Tour, which is cool. It's quite a, I think it's just over 3,000 meters tall, but like the technical bits only start sort of around the 2,800 meters mark, and that was sweet. It was really good, just getting some climbing experience in crampons and everything like that, because it's a little bit different. And then the course culminated in climbing Alalinhorn, which was my first 4,000 meter mountain, and it was pretty breezy because we just literally got the ski lift like the majority of the way, and then it was effectively, I think it was like 600 meters of elevation to get to the top, which is kind of a bit of a shame almost, because it's like I had built up 4,000 meter mountains in my head to be this like super huge deal. You know, they are the thing in the Alps, like 4,000 meters and above, and then it was probably the easiest hiking day that I had done in like the past year. It was like 600 meters of elevation. I think my heart rate never really got above like 125. We were chilling. But it was cool. Like, it's cool to have started the 4,000 meter journey, and it was beautiful, like eye-wateringly beautiful. I probably just would have preferred to do one with like maybe, you know, an approach to a hut, an overnight stay in a hut, and then an approach up the mountain. But like that's no shade on the course or anything like that. It makes total sense to do it this way, and I was on a fairly beginner one. It made me chuckle. I will say though, the course wasn't without hazard. I did manage to cause quite the rock fall. You know, again, being a sport climber, I'm used to crags that are quite well pruned, and then in the alpine, it's chossy. Chossy is the word that climbers use for loose rock. So if a climb is chossy, then it means that there's a hazard of loose rock. And in the alpine, like, there's obviously just a lot less footfall, so there's a lot more choss. You know, on sport climbs, if a rock is likely to be pulled off, like it's probably been pulled off by the time you climb it. You know, if these sport climbs have existed for like 50 years, you're probably pulling on. There's only a certain number of holds. If it's going to come off, it's probably already come off. Whereas in the alpine, like there's a lot of route variety. The mountains are massive. There's a chance that you're pulling on something that has never been pulled on before. And I managed to pull off like, I don't know, a table size. Table size. It can't be. It was big. A computer size, like a big PC, like a big PC size rock into my lap. Like when I was I was tied to someone, but we were not in terrain where we felt like we needed to pitch it at all. So I was effectively free soloing, and like this rock just like peeled off into my lap. Even though I had banged it and it sounded like a little bit hollow, which is normally the telltale sign that it's loose, but it didn't sound that bad. And then, yeah, I just pulled it off and it just came into my lap. And thankfully, I managed to launch it like off out to the left of me because I was aware that my climbing partner was to the right. That would have been disastrous if it had gone any other way. And it smelled crazy. It smelled like gunpowder, and it made the craziest sound. And that definitely woke me up. And now I bang on every single rock that I touch and make sure that it is not loose, because that could have been bad. That could have been really, really bad. So that was that. And that wasn't on Alaninhorn or on Aiguille at all. That was actually just when we were doing some like training climbing stuff. So I guess that's the other thing. It wasn't even on like a peak or any route that was really meaningful at all. It was literally just like sort of like pootling about on mildly technical terrain. And yeah, that happened, which was a thrill. I know it will happen again, but like I want to try to avoid that happening too much. And yeah, to finish off that trip, good friend of mine flew out. A good friend Josh flew out, who actually, funny enough, shot, like, some of you may slightly know Josh because he filmed all of the Minecraft Earth stuff with me and Grian, and has, shot a bunch of the sort of like, a lot. Anything that hasn't been filmed by me on my channel was probably filmed by Josh. Now that I think about it, just because, he's a super close friend and a very talented filmmaker. We had some fun hikes. We went to Zermatt to see the Matterhorn, which is cool. The Matterhorn's a very beautiful, iconic mountain. Did some bird watching, which was sweet. Josh brought his absolute bazooka of like a 600mm lens on the hikes, which was bold. Like, there's me counting every single gram of my pack and making sure that everything's super light. And then he's out there with like a 2-kilo lens. But I respected it, and we got some crazy shots of a vulture. So worthwhile. And on that note, it was time to head home. And then it was summer of training, climbing, relaxing, enjoying time at home effectively, before heading out to Chamonix again. And I want to say again, even though I said it at the start, I am so aware of how lucky I am. And I must admit, it's actually pretty nice for me to sit here and talk through these trips, because it's making me reflect and think about things that I haven't thought about for a while. Like, obviously, I look through the photos regularly. You know, like I delete Instagram off my phone a lot because I don't like spending too much time on it. And I don't have like, I really try not to spend too much time on any social media. So it does mean that I just spend a lot of time, like if I'm just sat there on the sofa, I'll flick back through my own photos. It's like a self-absorbed Instagram. And obviously it triggers all these memories in my head. But it's cool talking it through, because obviously, you know, with the photos, you're being reminded of the visuals. Whereas when I'm chatting it through here, I'm being reminded of like the emotions and like the situations, I suppose, and the people, which is pretty cool. So yeah, but I am super aware as I'm talking it through. I'm the luckiest person alive. It's crazy. Chamonix trip number 2. The plan was, having done a bunch of stuff in the Alpine, I had spent all summer training. I was then going to head out and do some proper Alpine ascents. It almost didn't happen, but then I secured some climbing partners for a 2-week window and booked everything last minute, headed over there for like a 4-5 week period, I think, staying in the van again. Now, this was our first time traveling to the Chamonix Valley without Kubo. So I traveled out 2 weeks before, and then Vic was coming out for 3 weeks. We're out there for 5 weeks in total. And the plan was bigger mountain days, big objectives, overnighters in alpine huts, in winter rooms and everything like that. And then, I had this 2-week window where I had secured some climbing partners, and I had big goals. I had big alpine goals, which, it kind of didn't come to be. Now, it's like, this trip was awesome in that I felt like I was now dialed. Like, having had all these experiences and done all of these things, now regular sport climbing felt easy. Didn't even think about it. That was fine. Multi-pitch sport climbing, also super dialed. Knew how to deal with different situations, knew how to read situations. Everything felt good there. Felt pretty comfortable on hiking days. Felt pretty comfortable in alpine environments. Understood, I was confident on crampons, confident with my ice axe, confident with everything. I was feeling good. My gear setup was dialed in. I knew exactly what I needed to pack for every single objective. It feels super good when you get that sorted. You know, you just know what you're doing. You're like, okay, I'm doing this today. You can pack your bag. You know when you're going to have to leave. You know roughly how long it's going to take. There's so many fewer unknowns because I was feeling pretty experienced. So I was in a good spot. And my plan was that I was going to climb the Bisshorn, and then I was going to climb Grand Paradiso, and then I was going to climb Mont Blanc. And we were towards the end of the season. It was all getting a bit cold, but all of these seemed pretty good. We did get a massive dump of snow the week before I was about to head up, so it would have been it would have been aggressive trail breaking and quite hard, but I was feeling confident that I was in a good spot for doing it. Got a fantastic weather window. Everything was looking good. And then the final stage of the process was acclimatization. So me and Vic, we decided to head up to the Albert Premier Hut, which is a hut that sits just above Chamonix. It's at around about 3,200 meters, I think. And we wanted to sleep up there so that I would spend some time up at altitude. So then I would be like mildly acclimatized for attempting Bisshorn, which you do in 2 days. You head up to the hut and then you spend a night at the hut and then you climb up the mountain from there. So that I thought that would do well enough acclimatization wise, especially because I'd spent the week prior doing a lot of hikes up high and kind of bumping around that sort of 3,000, 3,500 meter range. Now, we get up to the Albert Premier Hut and like the conditions are beautiful. It looks stunning. It's above like a really amazing glacier. You've got views out to a bunch of really pretty peaks, and it's just amazing. I take some photos that I'm super happy with. There's one where like the sun had literally just setting, and it catches. It's like it still has like the glacier still has a lot of the texture. The glacier is now drier, so all the crevasses are visible. So you've got like these crazy ice formations, and then the mountains are popping. The moon's there, but there's still color in the sky. Looks great, but yeah, I was up at the hut, and both me and Vic were like, man, we don't want to eat. This is so weird. And we were just feeling like cold sweaty. And Vic has never acclimatized before or like slept at altitude before. So she was like, this is bad. This is like, what are we doing here? And we were in a winter room. We were not in the actual hut. The hut had closed. So we're in a winter room, which is effectively like a little shed off to one side. So it's beautiful. It's in a beautiful location, but it is quite basic. And there was like a few other alpinists in there that had really cool objectives. We were chatting to them, but we were both feeling pretty rough, which given it's not a crazy hike up to the Albert Premier Hut, I think it's about 1,300 meters, which is about 4,000 feet of elevation gain. It's not that aggressive. Yeah, we were feeling pretty written off. And then we go to bed quite early because you generally go to bed pretty early in these alpine huts because people are waking up early. So it's kind of like the nice thing to do. We were in bed by like 9 p.m. and we were just lying there and then just felt terrible, really struggled to breathe. And I was like, I am not acclimatizing well. This is weird. I normally acclimatize really well. Normally okay at altitude. Like, what is going on? Started getting cold sweats, which when you're in a winter room at 3,200 meters, mildly out of season, and it's sort of like minus 12, that's not the best because your cold sweats do become legitimately cold quite fast. And then, yeah, like just from there, just could not sleep. Neither of us could sleep. And we were, yeah, like I think I didn't get any sleep until the sun started to rise, which must have been maybe like 5 or 6 a.m. And then I got like a couple hours and then woke up. And I was like, dude, I have not, like, what is going on? This is the worst acclimatization cycle I've ever had. So we descended down into, we left the Alpine hut, descended down into the valley, and it only got worse. Like, we got back to the van, and I think then I was able to relax. Like, up to that point, I'd been aware that, you know, I've got things that I need to do. Got back to the van, and then just was like, almost passed out. And I don't know what we had. It might have been COVID. Might have been some kind of super flu or whatever's been going around. But I think maybe Vic had like contracted it on the plane and then it had come on. Regardless, it was not a fun time, and I was bedridden for about a week, and then the next week was like, anything that I did, my heart rate was spiking like crazy. So like zero ability to do any kind of high output activity. Even rock climbing was just like super hard. I was just getting gassed out entirely, which meant I completely missed my climbing partner window and weather window for all of my mountain objectives, which was a bit of a shame, you know. But like, here's the thing. I was still out in Chamonix, and I was still in an incredibly beautiful location. And I had still had some amazing experiences. And although I missed the objectives that I went there for, like, that's not a big deal. I was with the people that I love, or I was with the person that I love, and it meant that we got to sit down and catch up on some shows and do a bunch of reading and just like relax a little bit. And in a way, it took the decision out of my hands, because with these sorts of things, you're always a little bit anxious. Given the snow dump that we had, I was a little bit anxious about what's the conditions going to be like? What's the avalanche situation? Am I going to be fit enough to break trail at 4,000 meters on some of these peaks? So the anxiety was taken away by me being horrifically ill. But thankfully, we after the few weeks of recovery, we did manage to get out on a cool mountain. Both me and Vicky headed up on Mumbo, which is a super cool 3,200 meter-ish mountain out the back of the sort of Chamonix Valley. And it's cool because it's just like quite a big day. It's 1,700 meters of ascent, I actually think it's 1,800 meters of ascent, which is getting on 6,000 feet of gain. And you do it over 20 kilometers, which I think is about 13 miles maybe. So it's like a decently big mountain day. There's no lift access. There's no nothing. Like there's nobody around. So it felt quite rugged. And really, really, really cool and so beautiful, because you get this amazing view of Mont Blanc. And it's funny, Mont Blanc, because it sits further back from a lot of the mountains around Chamonix, it actually kind of looks a little bit small because it's in the background. But as you ascend higher, it kind of grows as you go up, and the parallax sort of starts to work itself out. And yeah, that was amazing. Took a bunch of really pretty photos. And just had like a super rewarding mountain day, and that was a cool objective. And it was cool that I was actually able to do it with Vic, because Vic is not interested in any alpine climbing. She has said like categorically sport climbing and hiking, loves both of those things, but like being in the alpine and these alpine environments, and where you're managing risk a little bit more, and you're making choices that are slightly, it's just more risky. She's not interested in it. I totally respect that. I totally understand that. And I also wouldn't want to be in those environments with someone who doesn't want to be there. So we don't. And that's totally chill. But it was awesome to be able to get a mountain objective with her, because it was like it was the perfect level. Like it's not in the alpine. There's no risk. It is effectively a hike, but it's just a hard one on steep terrain with a slight snow cap up at the top, and then just beautiful views looking out. And it was awesome. And then a friend traveled out, and we got to do a bunch of big multi-pitch days, some via ferrating, spend time in the town, and just it's always cool. It's always cool when you're on these trips and people get to from your England life, I suppose, from life at home, travel out to a place that you have spoken about so much and come out and actually, you get to experience it again for the first time in a way. Like you get to say like, look, there's Mont Blanc. Like, look at this. Like, oh, do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? Like, it is super cool sharing that. And it gives you the opportunity to tick off some sort of like classic objectives that you haven't done, because you've spent so much time there. So then that was that. That was kind of the last long trip of the year, and it was epic as always. And I've said it a few times. I think I mentioned this in the previous video, but like definitely am looking into the possibility that I could move to somewhere in the Chamonix Valley, probably slightly further down the valley, for many reasons, but yeah, that is the plan going forward. We'll see. I really would like it if my ratios could like imagining that my home could be in those environments and like be surrounded by mountains all the time, but then I spend sort of like 30 or 40% of my year traveling in the same way that I'm kind of describing here, but traveling back to England, like almost just flipping the ratio, right? Right now I spend most of my time in the south of England, and then spend some of my time out in the Alps. It's like I kind of want to flip it and be in the mountain environment most of the time, but then spend like really concentrated, quality, good time with friends and family multiple times a year, for month-long stretches, sort of like 3 or 4 times a year. That sounds perfect, and that's something that I'm working on. But it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I'm not going to bore you to death with the bureaucracy and the visas and all that, because it's been a chaotic few months trying to sort everything and trying to work things out. But regardless, after that was the last trip. I think after I had missed my alpine goals, I think at that point I decided I was going to go to Ecuador and try Cotopaxi, because I was feeling in a good place and I was psyched to get some form of big mountain objective done. So that's when I made that decision. But after that, was back home for a while, turned 30, which feels good. Actually travelled up to Edinburgh for a proper holiday of just relaxing, like an actual city break. It's a beautiful city. Again, photography-wise, just easy. It's just so cool. It's just such a cool... Everywhere is cool. And as an absolute massive coffee snob that I am, it's an incredible place for that sort of thing as well. God, just so much good coffee. I mean, geez. Like, I actually had some of my favourite coffees I've ever had there. And, yeah. And it's actually changed the flavor profile that I like in my coffee. Like, I didn't normally used to like the slightly more like fruity sort of like specialty coffee style coffees. But after going to a few of these like amazing coffee shops, places like the Source Coffee Roasters, Caffeine was also good, although it was a more like traditional coffee, but it was just a really good traditional like flat white coffee. But then Source Coffee Roasters was like, oh, yeah, I do actually really like these sort of fruity, weird flavors in my coffee. And it's actually changed what I look for in the beans that I buy. And also changed the ratios I normally go for. You know, I now go for like a shorter extraction. Slightly shorter extraction with a slightly smaller yield. You know, if we're going to get nerdy about it, 19 grams of coffee beans, slightly more coffee than you normally would go for. And then, I aim to get my grind dialed so that I get a 20-second-ish extraction with a 40-ish, 43 mil yield. And then generally I make a flat white every morning. So I normally do around about 80 mils of barista oat milk, which is delicious. And that is how I start my day. And currently I'm actually drinking DAC Milky Cake beans because they are really nice, and I've had a few of them. But then I think I am going to get some fancy specialty fruity bits once those beans run out. Anyway, if the nerdy climbing talk hadn't put people off, nerdy coffee talk probably will have done. I don't know who's watching at this point. It is 12:30. Thankfully, we're almost there. I mean, so that was incredible. That was so lovely. It was just such a pleasure spending time in a place and relaxing, and like not also having the baggage of having to think about what you're doing. Like, as funny as it sounds, like, you know, you have to make a lot of decisions like multiple days in advance when you're on trips where like physical activity is the thing. It's like, do we go on a hike or do we save energy for like this multi-pitch thing? You know, do we go climbing indoors or do we save our skin for XYZ? You know, do we travel here and then give up on this objective? You know, you're thinking about all that sort of stuff. Whereas, like, it was so nice just being in a place and just being able to relax and just have a normal holiday. And I do want to do more of that sort of thing. But equally, with Europe days the way they are, we only get 90 Europe days in a 60 or like a 180 day window and everything like that. Kind of can't apply that same stuff across in the continent because... we use up all of our Europe days most years, and they're all locked into alpine goals and big goals and things. So it means we don't have that much time to relax. The good thing is I find enjoyment from the non-relaxing, but the city break was really enjoyable those 3 or 4 days. But then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I then headed off. This was actually early this year, so. Actually, only a couple of weeks ago, headed off on a Wales winter camping trip. Something that I've wanted to do for a little while, solo winter camp. I got myself, I recently got myself like a nice 4-season winter tent, so I was excited to test that out. And then we got a bunch of snow in Wales recently that was, really, really beautiful. Like, the conditions were incredible. I was actually I say I have wanted to winter camp for a while, but the reason I actually went to Wales was because I wanted to do some technical ice climbing and technical sort of like graded climbs in mixed conditions. So like mixed climbing is climbing in crampons, 2 ice axes, and then you're doing like a mixture of ice climbing, snow climbing, or like cutting steps and stuff, and rock climbing, but with crampons and axes, sort of like wedging the axes into cracks and things. So I wanted to do some of that, but then climbing partners didn't work out, and the conditions kind of didn't work out. You got just too big of a dump of snow. It was just pure powder. So then on the morning that I was there, I actually changed my objective from being a climbing day to being a winter camping day. And this created problems that I had not. It's always difficult when you change your plan in the morning. There's a lot of things to do for that plan change, right? Like in these environments, you need to check weather forecasts, check conditions, check everything. Especially when you're winter camping, where the weather forecast obviously, can change significantly over the course of like a 36-hour period, right? And I kind of didn't do this so well. So then I climbed up a mountain in thick snow, like waist-deep thick snow, which probably wasn't wise to do on my own, especially because the visibility wasn't that bad. And I was aware of this to the point where I actually did bail. Like, I got quite close to the top and then turned around, but then someone went past me. And that meant that A, they were breaking trail, but also B, it confirmed to me that it wasn't really like as dangerous as maybe as I had first thought. My big concern was because the visibility was bad. I don't know what's above me, and like the slope could pitch up and I could be in avalanche terrain. That was my big concern. And I will say, someone else doing something does not necessarily mean that it is then safe. Like, that's one of the big rules of like avalanche safety, is like just because there's a track across like a slope does not mean that slope is not likely to avalanche. Like it doesn't mean anything. Like it's functionally irrelevant. At the time, it felt right, and the guy looked pretty experienced. So anyway, I went up to the top of the mountain, then came back down, set up my tent and everything like that. And then, as far as I was concerned, the weather forecast for the evening was that it was like, maybe 5-mile-an-hour winds and pretty clear. Now, I set up my tent. I'd never set up this 4-season tent before, other than in my house. And I've never pitched a tent on snow before. So these were all things that I was learning. Pitched it. Actually didn't guy out the tent correctly first time, which knocked my confidence a little bit. But then was able to sort it out. This tent operates slightly differently to how I've had tents in the past. It's an alpinism tent. The poles go on the inside of the tent. It's a bit of a funny thing. So like tensioning it is quite important. But I managed to get it dialed in. It was pretty cold, probably maybe -5. I was up 700 meters of elevation, so definitely way above the freezing level. It was definitely about -5. The water in my bottles was starting to freeze and everything. And then started cooking myself some dinner. I had a dehydrated meal. I knocked over my jet boil inside the tent, which wasn't ideal. Thankfully it wasn't on, but I did spill water inside the tent, which didn't feel amazing. That also knocked my confidence. I was like, I'm useless. Like, what am I doing out here? I shouldn't be here. And then at this point it was still like 6 p.m. and I was like, maybe I should just bail. Like, I don't know, because the wind had started to pick up. And it definitely was not 5 miles an hour. And like, I was suddenly just very acutely aware that I was like stacking up a lot of firsts here. It's like I'm stacking up. It's like my first time winter camping, first time using my new tent, first time pitching a tent on snow, like first time really solo wild camping, and like first time really being in deep snow conditions. Like, all of these things, and first time being in this location. I've never been here before. I thought I pitched my tent in like a fairly decent place, but it was like decently exposed. I was just suddenly really aware that I was like, I've stacked up a lot of things that are like first times, and like if I've messed up any of these things, it could go really wrong. So I spent a lot of time being quite anxious. I would say I spent Yeah, between like 6 p.m. because you go to bed pretty early when you're winter camping because it just gets dark. There's nothing else to do. I was listening to my audiobook, but from 6 p.m. to about 10 p.m. I was like constantly running a cycle in my head of like, should I bail? No, it's fine. Should I bail? No, it's fine. Should I bail? After 10 p.m. I was like, actually, it's now cold enough, windy enough, and like snowing enough. By the way, yeah, it started snowing, like blizzarding, that like bailing is maybe the more dangerous option. So then I was like, I'm going to have to stay and just sit this one out. And by this point as well, I was fairly confident I had done things correctly. And like my tent was staying set up and it was staying good. But I was still pretty anxious. And honestly, some of the anxiety came from like the fact that there would definitely be like headlines about this like British YouTuber, blows off side of mountain, has to be rescued by XYZ mountain rescue team after attempting to winter camp with little experience and new equipment. I was like, oh my goodness, it's gonna be so embarrassing. Like, oh gosh. But thankfully, like nothing happened. There was a decent droppage of snow and there was a decent amount of wind throughout the night. But then when I woke up in the morning, and I would like sworn off it, by the way, like about 12 a.m. or like 1 a.m. I was like lying there. I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is so stupid. I'm just gonna stick to sport climbing, indoor climbing and hiking. I'm never doing anything like this ever again. I hate having to make decisions that are like important, right? Because that is a thing. How often in life are you making decisions where like technically they could be life-altering decisions? It's not that often, at least not that you're aware of. So you're doing it while you're driving, but you're not aware of them. But like, yeah, there's not that many where you're like weighing up risks, right? It's like, and I was just lying there and I was like, I just hate it. I don't want to do anything like this ever again. And then managed to fall asleep, woke up in the morning. It was like a beautiful sunrise over the mountains. And it was just like, it was pink skies. My tent is like it's called Alpenglow Pink. So it literally is matched to the color of the sky. So I like unzipped the door and it's like everything was matching. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I could see, I'm gonna mess up the pronunciation, but I am aware I don't want to keep saying Snowdon. It's Earwidfa. Yeah, I could see Earwidfa off in the distance and like Egan and like all these really pretty mountains. They were all covered in snow. Oh, it was so beautiful. And I woke up and I was like, oh, I probably will do this again. This is like the best. I'm so happy. And I was so warm. Like I had warmed up. I've got a minus 22 degree sleeping bag. So I was toasty all night. I had all my gloves on because a lot of this kit, like I was basically doing this as a test for gear for Cotopaxi, effectively. So I was testing out like my mountaineering boots, all my gloves, my down jackets and things, which all performed really, really well. But yeah, and I was there. I was like warm. I'd had actually a weirdly good night's sleep. The light was crazy, and I was like, I'm definitely doing this again. This is the best. And I think at that point, I then booked myself onto a Scottish winter climbing course, and I have literally just come back from it. So, yeah, I had spent like a few weeks at home after this Wales winter camping trip, and then headed up to Scotland. We had some pretty brutal conditions on the first day, which meant that we spent a lot of time going over details inside, which is good because the other person on the course was like quite new to climbing, so I actually had to go over a lot of like rope technique and knot tying, which would have been very hard to do on the hill in like 50-mile-an-hour winds. And then the next day probably had one of the best days of climbing of my life. I love mixed climbing so much. It's the best. It's so cool. So just climbing with like ice axes, like thwacking them into ice and then like torquing them into rock cracks. We went to a place called Quarry and Snecta. Goodness me. I'm going to get blasted down in the comment section. And it was the best. It was just so cool. Yeah, just climbing some fairly moderate winter climbs. It's all stuff that I probably would have felt okay free soloing if it had stayed at that grade. That being said, like it was super fun just being on second and just being roped up and like just like it was just so cool. Like it just and I think the thing that I liked the most is that it's almost like, although that was my first time doing a proper technical winter ascent, it felt like all of the things that I had spent the past year learning, right, had like come together, and everything was dialed, even though I had never done it before. You know, like my understanding of rope work was really good from months spent doing loads and loads of multi-pitch climbing and like sorting out rope issues and understanding how rope works and like understanding how to clear out tangles and making sure that you're not like getting yourself into tangles. That was good. My understanding of layering systems from doing multi-day hikes and doing lots of stuff in the Alpine meant that I was like arriving, I wasn't sweating, I was warm, I was able to like carry the right amount of equipment to be warm but not so much that it's heavy. My pack was super light because I only had the essentials. My climbing movement was good from the years of climbing that I've done, and then like my ability to walk and maneuver in crampons and like understanding of how a crampon feels, like when a crampon's in a good spot or not in a good spot, also felt pretty good. It just all felt like it was coming together really well. And even though this was a first experience of mine doing this technical winter climb, like I just felt like I belonged there, if that makes sense. Like I didn't feel stupid being there. You know, I didn't feel like, whoa, like this is crazy. Like, oh, I'm so out of my depth. It's like, no, this is like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And it was super cool. And I definitely want to do more Scottish winter climbing, and I definitely want to do more technical climbing in the Alps. Like that is my goal for next year. It's weird. I've got like this kind of high altitude trekking goal that's coming up next week, but outside of that, I actually don't want to do too much high altitude stuff, and I really do just want to do more technical stuff in the lower altitudes, mixed climbing, you know, snow, ice, and rock. It's just so fun, and there's just something. I don't know, it feels like you're in a movie. I don't know when that will stop happening, but like when you're like swinging an ice axe into ice and it just like bites into it, it does feel like you're just like in a movie. like you know, it's just like this is like mountaineering, you know, this is like going up a mountain now. Like I'm hanging, I've got my ice axes in, I look down and like I can see my crampon points, like my front points are just like in snow and ice, and then beneath me is this like gully that's just like disappearing off into the distance. Oh, it feels like proper climbing, you know. And yeah, it's the coolest thing ever. So that is everything. So I guess like, yeah, now I'm heading off on to Ecuador, and I'm going to have more stories to tell, and maybe next year I'll do another video talking about my trips and things. Again, I just want to reiterate, I am the luckiest person in the world. Like I feel super fortunate to be able to do this and like control my schedule in a way that allows me to do it. You know, and like it's insane. And I'm so aware that it's a fleeting experience, and that's why I'm trying to make the most of it while I can, because there is, you know, when YouTube for me eventually peters out and people no longer want to watch my videos, then I will end up getting a real job, I suppose, and this will not be available to me, and that is totally fine. I'm very, very fortunate to have had the ability to do this, and I'm making the most of it, and I'm having a blast. And yeah, I hope this video gives like a little bit more context to the images that I share on Instagram, you know, because they are snapshots, very brief snapshots of a long year for starters, a very full year as you can hear here, but they are brief snapshots, and although I do try my best to, you know, instill as much visual storytelling as I possibly can in the photography, and I do try my best to, like, with the photos that I choose to share, tell a story in frames, there's only so much story I can add. And, you know, hopefully this makes it clear that I am just genuinely super passionate and super intrinsically motivated to be out in these places. And, yeah, it's what I love doing. And it's been actually really enjoyable for me to chat through, so this is maybe more for me than it is for you guys. But yeah, if you have any questions about any of the stuff that I've spoken about, please do chuck it down in the comment section. Any questions about the trips or the locations or any climbing stuff, I will happily try my best to answer it once I'm back off of Cotopaxi, because I guess when this releases I'll probably be up there.